Welcome back to Catalyst Conversations. Today, my guest is somebody that I have known, for maybe like 14 years, 13 years, but haven't really known him until the last few years. It has been somebody that I have driven by his house when I lived on Veronica, and I saw this man planting trees and this garden, and everything was always beautifying our neighborhood and trying to encourage other people to beautify our neighborhood. And so I never had a chance to get to know him until these last few years. And so today's guest, we will all get to know him even better, is Howard Luna. Howard, welcome to Catalyst Conversations.
Thanks for inviting me, Matt. And actually, I think that's the best introduction I've ever had. So thanks again for that.
Well, it has been one of those things. That's my great English there. It has been the truth. I remember for years driving by your house, and my wife would always be like, well, where does he get these trees from? Like, how is he always finding the best ones? Like, you've always been somebody that has been encouraging this community to better itself, first and foremost through landscape and beautification projects. And so that is kind of how I got to know you a little bit, but it's only been, I don't know, this last election cycle, maybe the last 4 years?
Yeah, I think so. I think
we
so.
really started to talk.
Yes, I would agree with that. You know, and like you said, probably post Katrina was when I finally first met you, right? Mm-hmm. And I said this to one person before, that there's so many things that I'd love to change about, you know, the storm, for example, not happening. But there are a lot of friends that I made as a result of that. Sure. That really, it made me feel good about some things, right? And so, as much bad as we all saw about Katrina, there were really some silver linings that came out, right? And some of it was the people that you met. The other part is that sometimes it's your outlook changes a bit, right? When you've lost everything physically that you had,
right?
They can be replaced, right? So you come back and you say, you know what? We can make this work. We can make it better.
Yeah.
And that was the whole thought process about coming back.
That's fantastic. Well, let's back up a little bit then. And this will be good for me too, because I only know bits and pieces of you as well. And one of the things that I try to do with all my guests here is I want to know a little bit of your background. Like,
sure.
I want to know who you are. And it's not a political thing. It's not like, hey, give me your speech or your stump speech or your political agenda. It is really, I want to know the character of Howard Luna. Who are you as a person, as a human being? And then we can go further into some deeper questions from that. But I want to know, like, where are you from?
Okay, so like most people here, although everyone says that they're actually from St. Bernard, for the most part, none of us are born here, right?
Okay.
So
yeah,
we're born, and I, like a lot of people, was born in New Orleans and grew up in the upper nine till I was about 4. And then my family moved from the upper nine to Veronica, actually.
Really?
2600 block Veronica.
Wow.
The backyard was Lacoste, right? It's 3 houses off Judge Perez. I could walk elementary school, high school. It was real convenient for me. And so we moved in 64, and interestingly enough, we moved there the year before Betsy hit.
Oh, wow.
And as a young child, I can remember in the bedroom with my brother and the wind blowing out, right, and Betsy and things like that. But never did I suspect or realize that how much damage and destruction was actually into Araby, which was in some cases no different than Katrina, right? But I never remembered driving through it. I never remembered seeing it like I saw it with Katrina.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing.
You were 5?
I was 5. Okay. And my wife she lived in the East, and she recalls being in the attic feeding the fish that were swimming around in her home.
Oh,
so,
wow.
But she recalls that. But again, outside of that, I don't remember much of Betsy other than the wind. I've been, let's see, from that point, I went to public schools most of my life.
Yes,
right?
You went to 4 years old, you moved here, 5 years, you were Betsy, and then elementary school was...
Lacoste.
Lacoste, okay.
Right, so from Lacoste to Trist. I spent 2 years at Trist and then left Trist in the 7th grade and went to Holy Cross for 7th and 8th.
Okay.
And I don't know if it was the fact that when I got off the Holy Cross bus, I was right in the middle of Chalmette people, or the fact that I had a lot of friends that went to Chalmette. Okay. That just said, you know what, I think this is a better place for me.
Interesting. That was my son. I had 2 sons. I have 2 sons, and they both went to Holy Cross. One started 5th grade, one started 6th grade. And then my oldest son, freshman year, he's like, no, I need to he had a community. He just never connected with the people
Yeah.
at Holy Cross like my other son did,
Mhm.
and never had the community. Always had the community, like you just said. He also went to Lacoste, and he had a community of people that were here, and so he went to Holy Cross. He's like, I don't have that community. So he decided to come back his freshman year. He finished at Shaman High School, and my other son finished at Holy Martin or Holy Cross.
Yeah.
So very similar.
Yeah, so it really worked out, and I have a lot of friends from Holy Cross.
Wow.
Still,
Okay.
that I met in 7th and 8th grade. Of course, that just continued along through high school.
Sure.
And I have quite a few friends at Chalmette, obviously, as well.
When was that? When did you graduate?
78.
Oh, you wanted to.
I'm a bit older than you.
They want to put you under the gun, but
But
78.
78, yeah. So I'm 63 now. And so, during this time, and we all go through trials and tribulations, right? So you figure some things. Betsy wasn't a big hit on me, and then I had a brother, was a year and 9 days older than me. Unfortunately, he got killed in a motorcycle accident when he was 12 and I was 11.
Wow.
So I went from being part of, having a sibling to being an only child at a young age.
Wow.
It was kind of one of the things that when I ended up getting married, I wanted 3 children, just in case something happened to one of the other ones. You didn't, you
Sure.
weren't left with one. And I didn't have an unhappy childhood. I mean, I had friends, right? Neighbors, and did a lot of things. So I would love to have had somebody to have discussions with,
Mm-hmm.
somebody who grew up with me that probably would know me better than anyone else. But again, life throws different things at you, right? So, so from there, high school, dated my wife, senior year. Interestingly enough, she, I guess I must have caught her on the rebound because she dated me and then she dumped me to go back to the boyfriend and then came back again. But in any event, so Charlotte went to Holy Angels, and Charlotte and I met in high school, and I spent a year at LSU, interestingly enough, and didn't do well. Again, first time away from home, got a little too anxious with some things, didn't really go to class. At the end of the day, it kind of bit me.
Yeah.
And so spent one semester there and then came back. And one of the most interesting things is when I came back, my dad is the more passive guy. My mom is actually the person who kind of ran things, right? If you got in trouble, dad was okay, but mom was a terror. And I can remember during the holidays after my semester at LSU, the fall, mom had actually arranged for me to have a job during the holidays, and I was going to go up to St. Rose and I was going to work on a grain barge. Now, to me, I thought it was more of an adventure because I said, okay, I'm going to go on a grain barge,
Sure.
I'm going to get to come home every day and I'll go to work. Well, no, that's not the case. So when you work 12-hour shifts and you never leave the boat.
Oh, wow.
And I said, okay, well, maybe if I don't leave the boat, maybe if we go up the river, like St. Louis, it'd be a nice little trip.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not true too, right? So it was kind of like we stayed within a mile of each other, right? And this boat operated 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of like first exposure to somebody who had been to prison before, right? That a captain had been in prison, and you had to cook for yourself. And these were all things that I was sheltered from. And
Right.
so, interestingly enough, I worked 2 days.
2 days.
2 days. And you had to actually share a bunk with the guy who was working the other shift. Well, I'm uncomfortable with that as well. So when I went to bed that night, it all clothes in, right? Kind of the way I worked is the way I got
What's
up.
that called? Hot sack?
I don't know.
That's what that's called when you share a bed, and
I-
you get in bed and it's warm already.
I guess you could be. That's not how I looked at it, though. And so when I finished the shift on the second day, went up to the captain and I said, look, when you get close enough to the shore, I'm gone.
Where was this?
Pardon me?
Where was this?
Oh,
Where
it
did
was
drop you off?
No, it was in St. Rose. So I was right there, right where we came on, because
Okay.
we didn't venture far. And
Gotcha.
so I said, do me a favor. And I said, pop me off and then tell the people at the control place to call my mom to come pick me up.
I'm done.
Because I didn't even have a car. She just dropped me off and left. So I'm on the levee waiting for my mom to come in. My mom pulls up in the car, right? She rolls down the window. Should you learn your lesson, son? I said,
Oh,
yes,
wow.
ma'am. She said, okay, get in the car. And I was good from that point forward, right? And so Charlotte and I got married at an early age, right? And so our first child was due following. So Rachel's 43 now. So she, 1980, Rachel was born. And so at that point, I was kind of still in college, and I had to put that on hold and go get a job.
Wow. Okay.
So then, so I did that, right? And then I started back in school at night. It took me 10 years to get a degree.
Where'd you get a degree from?
I got a degree from University of New Orleans. I have a degree in finance. But Matt, what I found was coming in with work experience into a class of people who had no experience at all was a huge advantage for me. Right? I could understand concepts, could understand things, could relate to the real world. And I think we miss that a lot of times with freshmen. Right, as they come in, people that just haven't had time to understand things beyond high school or beyond the home and how all of that plays into it, right? Because you know as well as I do, you go in and you want to major in finance and realize that of all the credits you have to earn in college to graduate, it's a very small percentage are actually in finance, but it's all the other stuff, and the other stuff is what gives you rounding, right? So you don't come off just being a finance guy. So you got some liberal arts, you got some sciences, you got all kinds of different things, history, geography, geology, all of that stuff is in there. And so those are the kinds of things that I learned going through. So anyway, I graduated, and the company that I was working for while I went to school, I still work for today.
Wow.
43 years.
43 years at one company.
One company. So I work for a company called the Linde Company, Linde. It's an interesting thing, and I love the job, and it's not like it's ever been 43 years in any one place. And what we do is we're a specialty chemical company, and what we do is we take the atmosphere and we separate the constituents. So as we're breathing oxygen and nitrogen, what my company will do is take those things down, those components down, elements down, to the boiling point, which is extremely low, and then we separate them out and then we sell them. It's an incredible business. We touch every industry there is out there.
Wow.
And I've loved every part of it.
43 years, I would hope so.
Yeah, so, it's the only place I ever worked. So I know, I've been there long enough to grow up with people there that are now executive VPs, presidents. And I've always told them, I don't ever want to move, right? Because in my belief is that I want my kids to know who their cousins are, right? And I know people that I've worked with that have moved 5, 6, 7 times. And at some point, you're just moving for the money,
right? And
it just wasn't worth it. So we've been fortunate enough to be able to be here that whole time, and never looked back, never regretted it. Thought it was always the best decision for us, and I think it is.
Wow.
So, all right. So let's say, what does that bring us to? So high school employment.
Then you got in. At some point, you got into politics.
I did, and I
was it JP? Is that where it started?
I was a justice of the peace.
Why did you get involved in that?
Well, the thing about it is after Katrina, a lot of people chose not to return, and some of them happened to be current elected officials that had said, I'm moving elsewhere, I'm not coming back.
Were you a JP before Katrina or after?
I was a JP after Katrina.
Okay, keep going.
And I wish I could remember what year I was a JP, but I was a JP for 3 years, and I actually liked the job because I like helping people, but there were parts of it I actually hated.
Sure.
And the eviction process. Yeah. While I could sit here and tell you it breaks my heart to have to evict somebody and a family that has no place to go, I understand that the law somehow allows us to do that. Now, there was one time in particular where it was between Christmas and New Year's, and we had one that came up before me, and I said, you know what, it was a family, didn't have anywhere to go, and it was like, can't you just postpone this thing to after the year? And so, you find ways to have the discussion with people to do the right thing, right? But evictions for people who have nowhere else to go, and I understand the money situation about it, right? I understand a lot of the things. But in the process, you lose touch with humanity. And the fact of the matter is nobody wants to put a family out on the street.
Right.
I don't want to. If it was me, I wouldn't want to put my family out there. I wouldn't want to put somebody else's family out there. But unfortunately, the law is the law in a lot of cases, and you don't have much choice but to follow it. So, but the JP job was an interesting job. So I stayed there 3 years. It was a 6-year term. I stayed 3 years. And the council job came up, and I said, you know what? I really want to try something that I can do more with, because as a JP, you're limited in your interaction with the public because you have to be unbiased on everything you do. And so I decided to run for council, which was my first time at it, right? And my first go at it didn't work well, and I didn't win. But the issue was I didn't stop doing what I normally did. And people knew me, I think, because I cut grass everywhere. I cut parish grass all over the place. And I said, are you going to stop? And I said, no, why would I stop? This is just what I do, right? We keep doing those things. We keep doing it, and we keep getting involved. Because maybe that's not, and I keep telling people, maybe it's not my time.
Right. Who'd you lose to? Can I ask that?
Yeah, Richie Lewis.
You lost to Richie.
Richie's first term as council person. Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
And then we ended up 4 years later. Richie decided to run a council at large. Spots opened up, and ran again. Okay. And I won. And the thing about it was, what I think made the transition so easy for me was I had already planned. I mean, I'd planned forever, right? So in the 4 years I had to be able to sit home, not in public office, I got to look and to see about the things that we needed to do. So when I came in, it was a whole list of stuff. And that's what I did, and that's where I started. And I look around, right? I read stuff. I firmly believe that if you don't have to plow the same field twice, you shouldn't do it. And that there are a lot of other places out there a lot nicer that do things a lot better than we do. I get frustrated that when you bring ideas back, people tell you they can't do that here. And I said, well, why are we so different? We're all the same, right? But we are in some cases. We're unique. I would rather say unique rather than different.
Do you find that as a common thread? The idea of, and this is my personal experience here, I've been here almost 18 years. I'll be 18 years in February. And one of the things that has frustrated me the most is a saying that I didn't learn until I came here. And it is what it is. And it's the same thing as, well, we just always done things that way.
We say that quite often here.
And I always get in, find myself in a not a confrontation, but, I ruffle feathers a lot because I'm like, well, how's that working? Just because we've always done it that way, does that mean that we continue to do it that way, even though we're not seeing any positive results?
Yeah.
And so it sounds like you're having that confrontation sometimes.
You do. Because there are so many things that I love about the community.
Sure.
And there are so many things that I think we can improve about the community.
Well, if you love the community, wouldn't you always find, if you saw something that needed to change for the better, wouldn't you want to make it better?
Yes, but some people look but they don't see, right? They listen but they don't hear.
What is that, cognitive dissonance?
Kind of, sort of, right? So
just a small level of it?
Yeah, so that means that if you don't pay attention to it, it just kind of goes away.
They hope so.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like the broken window theory, right? But in this particular sense, and our community is such that, and Matt, you're newer to the community compared to
only 18 years. That's
all
right.
of us that are here. So we all understood what it was like to grow up here, right? And we all cling to that same thought,
right?
And that same belief in how it looked and how it felt, right?
Sure.
But it's not. And things do change, and it evolves. It doesn't have to evolve in a bad way. It can always evolve in a good way, right? And so we're different than we were when I grew up in the 60s, obviously.
Sure.
We're different since Katrina.
We're different from Ida.
Absolutely. Well, and everything. And we'll be different a year from now than we are today. And being different or change is not a bad thing. It's uncomfortable sometimes.
Right.
But it's not a bad thing, right? And if you just give it a chance, and you give it, you present it to the people, more than likely they'll embrace it. And if they don't embrace it, guess what? We can change it.
Yeah.
Lindy always said, I reserve the right to change my mind until I get it right.
Well, gosh, as we get further in this conversation, I'll tell you over and over, when it comes to my faith and the things that I've learned as I continue to grow, the things that I believed 10 years ago are not the same things that I believe today.
Yes.
Because I've been willing to open myself up to like something deeper. I dig for truth a little bit harder now. And because I've found things that I never knew before, it has changed my opinion. And I think as I've learned about change, one of the things that I've learned is that people typically are afraid of change. They don't like change because sometimes change takes work. They might have to change themselves. And most people don't like that. It's easier to just let things continue as they are.
It is, Matt, but the problem is if you continue with that attitude, by the time you figured out that you should have changed, you got a lot more work to do.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
That's why I always say, how's that working out for you, right?
Well, and in some cases it's not working well.
Right.
But when a community is so entrenched and I'm going to say that, entrenched in how they think, you just gotta, you take anything they're gonna give you, right? You could take a little bit, you would take little steps all the time. And then at some point, 4, 8, 12 years later, you look back and you say, look, we've gone from A to B, and that's a long way for us, right?
And to give credit, like, it's not just this place. I mean, it is a human condition. I mean, all communities have these problems of, apathy. And I think, and I don't know if I hate when I say this, like, I don't remember this growing up, like, and maybe you're 10 years older than me, so maybe you can help me. Maybe you have the same opinion, I don't know. I don't remember things that used to be so apathetic as they are today when I was younger. Like, we were always doing different things. We were always experimenting or trying new things. And I've never experienced the amount of apathy and laziness that I've experienced in the last, not less than a decade, 5, 6 years. Like, I feel like things have changed rapidly over the past few years. I don't think that's just a St. Bernard thing. I think, like, especially as a nation, and in several areas, we are struggling with apathy, whether it be because of cell phones and smart technology.
I think you're absolutely right. I watched a program called The Blue Zone. I don't know if you've seen it. Okay, so Blue Zone is actually a program where a person visits areas in the world whose the average age of the population is greater than 100. And he looks at the things that make that happen, right? And so one in particular was Okinawa in Japan, right? So that population, when he first delivered it, they had centennials that were bunches of them until fast food rolled in, right? So they didn't have any access to fast food restaurants. They didn't have any access probably to iPads, Facebook, and all of the things which tend to, in some people's mind, make it better, right? But other people's minds, it's kind of slowing you, and I'm going to say slowing you down to a point where everything is so convenient, and we're so in tune to convenience that we stop moving. Right, because quite frankly, you don't have to leave the house anymore.
No.
You can have everything delivered to your house, groceries, everything else. You can watch TV, you can play you don't have to move anymore. And that's one of the things that he found so interesting, was that how it's changed and how it's evolved. And I think it comes back to what you said, and in a sense, is that the apathy is that today you really don't have to do a lot to exist. And I'll say that in a way that, for example, like I said before, you don't have to leave the house for anything.
No.
You don't.
And if you have to wait longer than a couple hours,
it's just not worth it. And so, but that's society as a whole.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so I don't know how you turn away to turn back to involvement, right? And you can see, and I see it even with my grandchildren, right? It's the way to pacify them at the table is to give them the iPad, give them the phone. So there's no interaction there, right? And they interact between them and the medium. And before long, we're going to lose our ability to communicate because people don't talk anymore.
I think we're already losing that ability. I think the younger generations especially, I mean, the younger generations, they don't even know how to date. Like when you and I grew up, like you had to have that difficult conversation with like, hey, like, does she like me? Like now it's just like, well, let's see, who can I date today? Like swipe right, swipe left, and I can type a conversation with somebody that I don't even know, but to have a real conversation with a human being in front of you,
it's tough.
Yeah.
You just don't know. And the thing about it is they will use that medium, whatever, is a way to convey difficult things to tell people. Right? Which takes the whole human aspect out of it, right? You want to, because I want to see how you feel when I tell you something bad. And I want you to see how I feel when you tell me the same thing. And we're losing that. And I don't know how to gain that back. So, when you talk to how I evolved to what I do and what's passionate to me, right? If you think about it, it's getting you outside is passionate to me. Getting you back in touch with moving, right? Whether it's walking, or, how I am with the cycling stuff, right? I'm the guy at the cycling stuff, or I'm the guy that plants the trees and things. I pay attention to things and I see things. So I travel a lot, and I think the biggest impact on me has been my ability, or at least the ability to travel,
Mhm.
right, with work, and to be able to see how other places are, to see
Oh.
other places and how things are, and to bring that back and to envision not how can we be like them,
Mhm.
but how can we take the pieces and be better than we are today? And so that's what I kind of looked at, and that's, I embraced the whole greenery thing, right? Whether it's trees or flowers or whatever, I embrace that.
I think we need to embrace that, and not just for beautification, not just for helping the planet. I think that it helps human beings.
Mhm.
I think the more and more we get disconnected from the dirt and the earth, the more and more we become disconnected from each other and everything else that matters. I think there's something powerful about getting our hands dirty, getting them in the dirt, planting a tree, pulling weeds, doing
Sure.
something with our hands. Our society as a whole has changed drastically over
Yeah.
the past few decades because of that. Nobody does that anymore.
Well, and I read quite a bit, and one of the things that, the last great president of the United States that did anything about that was Teddy Roosevelt, right? He established a National Park Service, right?
Really?
He established Yellowstone, he established the Grand Canyon. And he had the vision to understand that if we don't set some of this stuff aside, we're gonna lose it. And I've always been a big believer in a balance between economic development
Mm-hmm.
and what's good for the community.
Right.
Because not all economic development is good for the community.
You're right.
And so, and again, I take snippets of things that I hear, right? And so Ag Magic is happening over at Dockville, and there's some inner city schools that came. And it was amazing to me that they had never seen a goat, right? Didn't know what these things were. And if we continue to do what we're doing,
Right.
right? I mean, there's only so much there. We're not making any more land. And if we continue to take it away for the benefit of economics, right? Then 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, when I'm gone and my grandkids are up and gone, what are we leaving for them? And so the conservationist side of me really comes out, right? And how I think that we each need to play a part in that,
Right.
and how do we, and I used to sit on the Economic Development Foundation board. And my whole thing was, how do you balance it, right? I don't want a home run. Give me a couple of singles, but give me something that adds value to it.
Right.
And people today complain by coyotes in the neighborhood, or raccoons, or possums. And the fact of the matter is, they've always been there. You're just taking away where they normally live.
Mm-hmm.
And where do you expect them to go?
Mhm.
Because, okay, well, we'll kill them all, right? And then what are you actually doing? Because every time we do that, it has a greater effect on everything, right?
There's such a thing called an ecosystem.
There is, but I don't think that people take it as serious as they need to. And to put it in perspective, tell me what you want to leave. What's your legacy, right? What do you want to leave as a community, right? Do you just want us to be like, an economic-driven community that does nothing but convert land to business so we can all make more money to do what with it, right? And I struggle with that, and I struggle with it because I think there needs to be balance.
Interesting. All right, well, let's back up a step then.
Yeah.
What is the role of government for this community then?
In my mind, the role of government
Yeah.
is to make our lives easier, right? To help us along. There are some things that the government provides that no one else can provide. So that there's some things that we have to do. I'm going to say like clean water, sanitation services, those kind of things. Now we can always do something different with it, but from a basic perspective, that's what the government does, right? And so what we're really supposed to do is make people's lives better, make the community better, to have some idea of where we want to go in the future, and just take the ideas and move it forward. And again, when you look at the government, because we're actually two pieces, and we'll just talk about parish government, right? You got the administration who actually does the day-to-day work, and the parish council who passes the laws and manages the budget. And somewhere in between, we're supposed to work together to make all of that work, right? That's a lot, and I don't want to say it's difficult, but it's not an easy transition from one to the other, because we all have different opinions about how things are to be, and even on the council, I mean, I'm one of 7 votes today. And in the administration, again, some things that they want, the bigger question is, do we actually need them? And what's our responsibility in doing some of those things? So at the end of the day, we should do what we need to do from a parish government perspective to make people's lives easier and to improve the community. I mean, I think that's what my job is.
Do you ever find it difficult when the choice of making the community better goes in contradiction to making somebody's lives easier?
You know what, the bigger question is that when I look at a question like that, is community I see as a community of many people and an individual I could see as one. And I think we exist to create laws to benefit a lot of people. We solve solutions or problems to benefit one. So I would never introduce a law that just benefits one person.
Mm-hmm.
That's more of a community issue. We can solve a problem one-on-one, or maybe we can't. Maybe we can just agree to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at, does it make an individual's lives better but not the community? I'll always side on the community side, and we could fix the one problem. Same with the business. I would never, if I had to make a decision on a business, should I vote for a business or should I vote for the community? It's a hands down deal for me. The community always gets the vote. Because none of the small businesses exist without community. I mean, and the proof in that is COVID. When people didn't go out to shop and they didn't go out the house, the small businesses were the ones that were on the hook, right? The bigger ones, the Valeros, the PBFs, the sugar refined, they find a way to exist.
Well, Home Depots, somehow they were allowed to open.
Yeah, so, but the smaller people, right? The small business people suffered. And so it kind of relates back to what's more important.
Right.
Business is community. The community drives everything.
Mm-hmm.
People drive everything. So, and again, I get to the point of government. The better we can make it down here for people who come in to say, we want a better place to live on the South Shore, because I think we are. We're the perfect place. You want to live on the South Shore, just as where you need to be.
Mm-hmm.
But we got to do some things. We got to do things different. We got to change our mindset on some things.
Mm-hmm.
We got a lot of stuff going for us.
Give me an example. What do we need to change our mindset on?
Again, when people talk about us, if I needed to change my mindset on one thing, then one thing I think we need to improve that we don't do a very good job on, I don't think we promote Nunes Community College as much as we should.
Okay.
I think it could be a huge driver for us.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think we do. I mean, when you have the discussion about education here, because people always brag about education, and rightfully so, Nunes never comes up in that discussion, right? And so we need to do that. I think the fire department does a good job. I think we have some things we need to fix, not within the fire department, but how we look at and treat.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I think some of those things need to happen, obviously more so on the eastern end of the side of the parish than on the west side.
Right.
But other than that, I think the sheriff's office does a good job. I think they focus on where they need to focus. I think sometimes the individuals believe that we need them on the street writing tickets for people running stop signs and people running speeding. But quite frankly, I don't want them doing that.
Right.
That's a behavior we need to change with the people,
right,
not with policing.
Right.
Okay, because if I want the sheriff's deputies to doing something, it's catching the major guys.
Right.
Okay, we need
keeping us safe.
Yes.
Not just writing out little tickets here.
Yeah, and and this deal in the community about how can we do, how can we change the mindset? Part of the deal was I thought you could do like speed limit Friday, right? So everybody makes a commitment to do the speed limit on Fridays, and maybe we can take it from Friday to work. Or maybe, today is stop for the stop sign day. You gotta somehow get the mindset to people.
Well, interesting enough, didn't you guys start a program for littering?
We did.
Didn't you try to change the mindset of that? How'd that work?
Not real well.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know, other than the fact that I believe, and I don't know. It's people are so interested to make sure that their car's clean, because I think the trash is coming out of the cars.
All the time.
You
see people throwing stuff out of the cars all the time.
There's a difference between littering in terms of people putting stuff near the curb versus littering for people throwing trash out the car. It's tough. It's tough to cite those people, because you got to see them, and you got to whatever the procedure is that allows you to do that. But again, it gets back on the mindset of the community, right, and the individual about how they feel about this place. And it's not everybody. And like I tell people all the time, they want to blame speeding and running stop signs on people who aren't from here, when quite frankly, they're all from here. They're your neighbors, they're my neighbors, and they do it. And all you gotta do is slow down a little bit. Right? Just stop for the stop sign. Do we have more stop signs than we? Absolutely we do. And you know why we do? Because people believe that stop signs slow people down. And it is absolutely not the case. If you want to slow somebody down on the street, the best way to do that is plant trees on each side of the block. And it's that feeling of enclosure that will slow people down.
Really?
It's kind of like having cars on both sides of the street. They'll slow down for that. But you open it wide up, and they won't. And so, there's some things that I think we can do from a parish perspective to do a better job in those areas to kind of get people to do stuff in the neighborhoods. But you and I have been through Katrina, worst thing ever happened here, and we've seen how far we've come, which is a long way. But we got to keep moving, and things are changing, and we just got to keep doing those kinds of things.
Next subject. What's your view of the role of family?
That's a good question. I think it's, from my perspective, it's the glue that holds us all together. And not only individually as a family, right? I've always said the wife was the one who was the glue that held everybody together, because when she had a bad day, everybody had a bad day.
Happy wife, happy life.
There's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of truth to that. And even when you have kids, it even becomes more.
Absolutely.
Because they look towards you in a different perspective. And so, it's not only the individual families, it's a collectiveness of families, right? And to some cases, we used to see that in the recreation departments, which was a way to get everybody together. And we do it today, but not like, and again, I'll go back, not like we used to, right? So we have, 7, 8, 9 different recreation parks those days, and things were as competitive, but not at a different competitive level. And I'm not saying they were better or worse athletes. Honestly, I think sometimes the parents is what makes it worse.
Well, I asked that because, I asked for many reasons, but one thing I've noticed over the years here is that people used to always tell me, like, this was a family community. Your grandparents and your parents and your kids and your grandkids, they were all together. I still have employees that they go to their in-laws' house and they eat dinner every night. But that was everybody. Now it's like a couple people. Where did that change take place? And second question, because of that change, what are the effects that you've seen? Well,
again, I really hate to relate everything back to Katrina, but we can talk prior to Katrina, and you're absolutely right. We're a generational neighborhood, community, right? So my grandparents lived here, my parents lived here, I lived here, I expected my kids to live here, my grandkids to live here, and we all lived here. And I knew people who had generational people that lived here, right? And so when you did stuff together, there was always this big family gathering about people to get together to do stuff. And it was too convenient for people. And I'm going to say that, I don't mean that in a bad way. I think people after the storm made a decision to move on. And when they bought somewhere else. And I don't begrudge anyone for making the decision that was good for them and their families. The only thing I've always said is, if you're going to move on, find happiness where you are. But still be happy about the community that you came from. And so I think that, that kind of, what ended up was my parents or somebody else's parents who were in the 60s or 70s didn't have just the drive to get back to have to go through that stuff again, right? Because if you really wanted to come back and refurbish your house, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of dedication, right? And people had to move to find something, whether it was to establish foundation somewhere else. Because we're talking years to come back, not a month or two. It took Charlotte and I 2 years to come back. And again, we've lost pieces of families, right? We've lost connections with friends. And those were the big communities. There was a group of people we went on vacation with every year that we never did after Katrina. And because we were all blown everywhere. So I think it takes time to redevelop that. But it's going to be different, right? And so I live here. 2 of my children live here. My third one my youngest lives in Orleans. But it's going to take a while for that to reestablish itself again. But the other part of this is, and I think this is the positive thing, is you've gotten some new people in here who bring a different perspective of things, right? And so I think that's important as well. And so what's gonna determine the viability of this community is bringing the young people, bringing people with different ideas in here to establish their foothold here and to figure out what they want and then move it forward.
Sure.
I think the inclusion of a lot of new people is good for us.
Yeah, I mean, and usually when you have new people, you have new ideas, new
Yeah.
cultures, new ways, new things you can learn. My question, I want to go just stay focused on just for a second, is how important is the nuclear family to a community?
I don't know, help me define what you see as a nuclear family.
Mother, father, children.
I think it's important. I think it's extremely important. I think what makes it tougher these days is when we were growing up. If for whatever reason that family, that nuclear family broke down, the grandparents were always there to help.
Right.
And you're not seeing that anymore,
No.
right? And so I think that's a piece that we're missing here.
I mean, and I bring that up because, I mean, statistically, like, we are struggling with the nuclear family today. I mean, so many broken families, so many single parents, so many kids without fathers. I mean, the statistics are off the chart, and we wonder why we're struggling so much with crime and some of these other things. We don't typically want to point to the direct correlation, but it sure looks like there's a direct correlation to these things. And you have so many emotional issues that take place as well when you have broken families. And so I feel like, not that the government is supposed to be involved with this, but like kind of like the littering thing, like, let's be positive. Like, how can we make this community better? From a government perspective, like, how can government come in and say, hey, like, let's work on, promoting healthy families?
Well, I don't know specifically programs. I know the federal government probably doesn't.
Not create a program. No, I don't want a program. I don't want the government in my business as a family.
Okay.
But how can the government just promote the idea of, like, picking up the trash? Like, you could just put up signs like, hey, don't litter, right? We're trying to promote something healthy.
Yeah.
But we never promote anything healthy for the nuclear family.
Yeah. I think that it's kind of the old adage where you get more with honey than you do with vinegar.
Yeah, but you don't get anything with nothing.
I understand that. So the bigger question is that you don't make it punitive. So if you don't do it, this is what's going to happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the bright side.
So where's the honey?
I don't know, because Matt, I know a lot of people who are single moms. They do a phenomenal job, right?
They do a phenomenal job, but they're tired, Howard.
I know they're worn out. I know, but you know what? It's that drive to do it.
Yeah, well, they have to, and I respect the heck out of. I mean, when my mom or my wife would leave and go on a trip, and I had to take care of the kids, like, for 3 or 4 days, like, I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad you're home.
Yeah.
Right? And even though we both have jobs, we can at least tag team together and help each other.
Yeah.
Single parents don't have that. And I believe that the message that's in culture is almost like promoting the single parenthood stuff. Like, oh, this is a great thing. Like,
Sure.
But in my mind, like, that's the absolute opposite of what is healthy for a community.
So when you're tired and there's no one else to help you, for the children, where do they turn? You know where they turn? They turn to the internet.
Mm-hmm.
They turn to everything else that has this, what I believe to be this view of the world that is a lot distorted, right? And so that's how they view it, and that's how they grow up, and it starts at a young age. I mean, it's not an issue we're talking 4 years old, 5 years old,
sooner than that.
Okay, so I mean, you start at that age. As a society, we struggle about how to make that better.
Right.
And I don't know if any of us have any of the solutions that's going to be acceptable to society.
Right.
And I'm not saying that there are solutions out there. I'm just saying that we, in the absence of being able to expend the amount of time it takes to raise a child and to raise a family and to follow up, because as I do, there's a lot of follow up on stuff, right? It's not just send them to school and not worry about them anymore. There's a lot of work to be done when they get home as well.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
That's where the work is done.
And here's what someone told me one time, and I tell this to my granddaughter all the time, and it's that just give me 8 weeks at a time. Give me 8 weeks, and then we'll give you the Christmas holidays off, and then give me 8 more weeks, and we'll give you the summer off. You know what I mean? And you take it, because there are very few times in a student's life that they get to start over. One of them is when you start high school.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is when you start college, and one of them is a new job.
Mm-hmm.
You get a brand new clean slate, but you can't progress through those things unless you stay focused and you do something. I'm not saying never have fun, because we all want to have fun, but you just got to focus on the things depending on what you want to do with your life, where you want to go. Not everybody's slated for college, and I would agree with that.
I agree.
But you can make you can be very successful. How about that? Without a college degree, you can. It takes the drive, it takes the experience, it takes whatever you need to do to make yourself happy.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't solve your nuclear family problem.
No, you avoided it really well. That's okay. I won't press you too much, because it's a very tough question.
It is.
And it's not, and here's where, like, I know you're a black and white guy. It's probably why you couldn't answer it, because in my opinion, it's gray. You know, there is a direction that we should head, but it's not a black and white, one size fits all solution. So I can respect that. So we'll move on. Next question then.
Yeah.
What's the role of faith in a community?
I'm sorry?
What's the role of faith in a community?
I think it, again, in the absence of believing in something, and you almost kind of, and I think about this sometimes, if I thought there wasn't a God, what would be the reason for me to do anything good or anything right?
Right.
Okay, so it's an understanding what the goal is, right? And again, you can take everything away from me, but you can't take my soul from me. You can kill me, you can dismember me, but you can't take my soul from me. So at the end of the day, it's what I own, right? It's with me, and it's whatever relationship I have with God. Now, I think faith plays a big part, and only because I think it puts you in the right frame of mind to do things, and only because I think it's that voice that keeps telling you this is the right thing to do. That's the way I look at it. People look at religion or faith as different. Not everybody that goes to church on Sunday is religious. And I know a lot of people who don't go to church at all that I would bet my bottom dollar on, right? That I truly believe in them. So I think that they do have faith. They just don't have their way of expressing it is a little bit different. But I think it's important, because without it, you think we're in chaos sometimes? I think it could be really bad.
Over the past few years, there's always statistics come out, and nationally we are about 35 or 38% of society considers themselves some type of attender of a church. And a tender could be like, I think it's either between 1 and 2 times a month, so it's not even a lot. You know, it's not somebody that goes every week. So 35% of our country is a part of some religious community, which is down from like 70% from 20 years ago. I see the same thing here locally. It's not any different. And I think even in some ways I could count that it's lower here than nationally. What do you think is the cause of that? And what has been the effects of that because of that? Well,
I think if you looked at the community, and I don't know if you've done research on I'm going to say types of religion, right? So I would have thought that being Catholic would probably be the majority of what we see here, but I could be wrong, right?
No, it is. It still is.
Okay, and so
even though there's most people that are Catholic haven't attended a service in 20 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they still believe that that's what they are.
Correct.
Right? And so
that's my point.
I don't I don't know the answer to the question, other than would have been nice to know what the statistic was prior to Katrina. Because I just think that more people got involved in everything else.
All I can go is hearsay. From pre-Katrina, attendance was much higher.
Yeah.
Especially in the Catholic Church.
Well, recognize though how many Catholic churches we had prior to Katrina,
Yeah.
right? And how many actually closed and
Right.
moved elsewhere, right? So when the population flowed, so did the church flowed. And so I don't know. I wish I had an answer for you, and I really don't know the reason why, but I can tell you this: there are more, and I'm going to say it for lack of a better word, independent churches, right? Worship areas that exist today that never existed before Katrina. You know, again, Baptist, Methodist, Catholic was the ones that I would envision, but you know, you have other places of worship, right, and other churches and congregations and whatever that have popped up. So I think that as people struggle with one religion or the views of one religion versus another, they still find that they have the faith. They're just looking for one that aligns more with how they feel. And I think that's where the local congregations come in. Now, is that going to swell as the population increases? That I don't know. I think there's a tendency for people to get, again, too busy to look to church, which is not a good sign. But there are people out there who never go to church that are great people. And so God's not only interested in what you do on Sunday, he's interested in what you do every day.
Well, I was just having this conversation with a local councilman, you know, and we were having this discussion. I was telling him the idea of faith from a biblical perspective, you know, and from a biblical perspective, the Bible isn't a Greek document. It's not a Western document, even though we like to make it an American document. It is an Eastern document in thought and writing as well. And in Greek, the word for faith is pistis, and it has the idea of, you know, what I believe in my mind, what I think. But pistis is not what it would have been spoken or thought of when the writers wrote these words. It would have been a Hebrew word, which was emunah, and emunah is a verb, not a noun. And emunah is translated faithfulness. It's what I do. So faith is more about how I live my life than the actual things that I believe in my mind, right? It's what you said a few minutes ago about, you know, if I didn't have a God in my life, how would I know it was right or wrong, right? Where do I get the determining factors of, you know, good and evil? You know, I should steal and lie and cheat because, you know, if there is no arbiter of truth, then I get to make up my own rules.
Sure.
Right? So part of that is cognitive, but faithfulness is I might want to steal, I might want to cheat,
right,
but I'm not going to.
And there's more people out here in this community that think that way.
To a degree,
but they just don't express it in the way that we would see it in the hard numbers.
Yes, and I would agree with that to a degree. I think that as I've studied this, you know, in this small community, and I can't speak for outside of our community because I've just been studying here, but I believe that this is true on a larger scale. One of the things that was hurtful to this community, and you said it, after Katrina, who came back?
That a question?
Yeah. Who came back?
Well, to me, it was the younger people who could afford to do it. Not from a financial perspective. But
they had the energy to rebuild
correct.
and do all this stuff.
Yeah.
So who left? The elder population.
Yes.
Where does wisdom come from?
Comes from the elder.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you have all of these people, these older people who took the whole family to church pre-Katrina, and they brought everybody.
Yeah.
And Katrina hits, those people leave. You have now the average age of Katrina, or after Katrina in this parish was 35, 36. So you have all of these young people who's nobody's saying like, hey, you know, let's come to church, let's be faithful, let's do all these things. And then you have all of these distractions with these new cell phones that are coming out and all these other things, and all these programs to have fun with my kids. And all of a sudden, nobody seems to be going to church. And so where is the idea of faithfulness in this community? And how does it apply to every aspect of my life? Because for me, Emunah applies to everything. It's not about going to church. Emunah is what dictates how I speak to my wife, how I raise my children, how I interact with my neighbor, the choices that I make that are good for this community. Do I plant these trees or do I just throw trash out on the road? That's what faith is. And faith should involve government, it should involve school, it should involve family. And I believe we've gotten to the point where And this is why we do the 4 pillars, and this is why I do this podcast, is because I believe faith has become this side thing that's over there. I got government to do, I got work to do, I got to send my kids to school.
Yeah.
But faith, maybe I'll get around to that. And even though there might be good people here,
Yes.
it does not, and I say this a lot of times, leadership is downstream of the culture. And what I mean by that is our future leaders that will be in charge of everything 10 years from now are the youth of today.
Mm.
What do the youth of today believe about morality? What do they believe is true? Is lying, cheating, and stealing okay for them? Do they see it in their parents? Do they see it in their educators? Do they see it in their politicians? Because if they see it there and they say, well, they do it, what do we think our future leaders are going to be?
Yeah.
And so if faith is not playing a role in community and dictating morality, that's not right, that's not okay, where are we headed as a community? That's a question.
Oh. I gotta help figure out what this statement is. I think it plays a big role, and and as you were kind of going through all of that, I almost believe that. And when you talk about people setting aside time for faith,
Mm-hmm.
from a Catholic perspective, we'll take two religious holidays
Mm-hmm.
where we pack the church,
Sure, Christmas and Easter.
right?
That's true in the
Christmas and
Protestant
Easter.
church, yeah.
Everywhere,
Yeah.
right? So it's not as if the people don't have faith,
Mm-hmm.
because all of those people have faith enough to go to church
Sure.
and believe it's as important for them to go to
Absolutely.
church with the whole family, by the
Mhm.
way. It's just that they can't find time to do it in between.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you change that, because as convenient as we make it for everyone these days,
Mhm.
people still don't have time. And I'll be the first one to admit that sometimes people will say, Howard, what are you working on? I said, I really don't know, but I don't have time to do anything. And so maybe on my part, it's not selecting the time that I needed to do things in the right order. Maybe it's just kind of a shotgun approach that I'm taking everything that comes along with me, right? And the fact remains is I can't shoulder it all.
Do you remember, I'm going to answer your question that you kind of threw out there, but you went by it. How do we change this? Do you remember, I think it was Gustav, or what was the hurricane right after Gustav, maybe the next year? It shut down the power.
Isaac?
And it might have been Isaac, and we were bringing in ice, and I remember handing out ice to everybody for days, I should say, in ice trucks. We were helping the community out. And there were these signs that started to pop up all over, people were putting them on their church banners and in yards and stuff, and it said, nothing changes until something changes. You remember those signs?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I remember that, and I thought about that for weeks and weeks and weeks, maybe even years, because something was wrong about it. Because the question was, or the statement was, nothing changes until something changes. And so the premise was, you need to change.
Yes.
So that something will change. And what I found in my own studies and research is that in reality, nothing changes until I change.
That's correct.
When I start to change, when I become more compassionate, when I become more educated, when I become more forgiving, I see things in a different light and I change the way I act.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a culture today that is very blameful, and we live in a culture that would much rather be the victim and point the finger at somebody else needing to change, as opposed to saying, no, what can I do? Do I need to plant more trees to make our community better health, or with air and beauty and all these things? What can I do? We've lost that as a society. So my charge to you, I guess, would be like, how do we change that? And I really believe, Howard, it starts with us.
Well, and so maybe the statement should have been, nothing changes unless you change.
Well, I feel that statement is still saying that. It's pointing the finger. You need to change, not me.
Well, I'm more directing it to you.
Well, yes.
But
But that's my statement.
But-
Nothing changes until I change.
yeah. So, but if you make things, and this has always been, and we'll go back to litter. Let's take litter for example. If I know that when I miss a few days of cutting grass,
Mhm.
right, there's more trash.
Hmm.
And because people see that the grass is high, so I'm going to toss it because nobody else is caring about it.
Right.
But I also believe that when you do things and you keep things right, and that's kind of the drive to beautify, right?
Mhm.
The more you beautify, maybe the more people will notice it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they'll develop a little bit of more pride and say, okay, unless I'm tossing this out the window, I'll just save it till I get home to put it in the trash can. Does that work? I think it does. It's kind of, again, getting back to the broken window theory, right? So you drive past a building and you see a broken window, and you keep driving past day and day, and then the next thing you know, you kind of get used to it. And then you see another broken one, no, it's not that bad. And you keep doing it, and the next thing you know, the whole block is
Right.
in total state of disrepair. No different than that, right? So we have to fix the broken windows every time. Not as if you can just accept it. So if we continue to do those things, maybe some pride will set in, right? So people would think twice about tossing something out the street or doing whatever people do, right? And again, I'm thinking it once you instill that pride, and I'm not saying we don't have it, because I do think there's a lot of people down here who do the right thing all the time. But I do think that it starts with little steps, because you can't make people do things. You can make them feel it. You can hope that they feel a different way about the community and they take a little bit more pride. It's like, and that kind of translates into a behavioral change. And we're not talking about anything major, right? We're talking slight changes. Now, there are some major changes that need to take place, for example, with the nuclear family. That's a major step, right? But some of these other things are just small steps that if people just consciously make the decision not to do it, the benefits are tremendous down here. They really are, because when people come to look at us, they don't just look at the thoroughfares, because you need to get to the neighborhoods, because that's where you're going to live, right? And if you see people blowing through stop signs or speeding or throwing trash and nothing gets taken care of,
Mm-hmm.
their opinion of us is not Judge Perez, or Parish Road, or anywhere else. It's what does it look like on Karen Drive, or Doe Tree, or any of these other streets, right? And they said, why should I live here when they don't care?
Mm-hmm.
And they never come back.
Mm-hmm.
And we're losing people these days, not because of that, but we've got all kinds of other issues with insurance costs and things like that. But when you talk about what we can do, some are, I'm going to say, there are none of them that are easy, but some are easier to do, that I think that we can make a big difference. And it's not a lot of work. But people have to say, you know what, I'll embrace this, and I'll support it. And I can't tell you how many people like come up to me and say, stop telling people to plant trees. And I said, well, wait, that's what I'm about. That's what I do. That's how I think this community needs to be.
Right.
And they said, start focusing on other things. I said, I'm focused on a lot of stuff, but this is what I'm passionate about, right? I want people outside. I want people connecting again with people, right? I want you to get the family out there and ride a bike on one of the bike trails. I want you to get out and enjoy it. I want you to enjoy the outsides. Get out the house, man. Get away from the TV and the computer and the rest of it. But it's because for long, get so consumed in it that you're my age, right? You're 63 and you're looking back and you say, what did I do, right? And how am I going to fix it now? And so, you know, those are the kinds of things I think about. It's the small steps, but it's the stuff that I think of we need to do for our kids, right? I don't want my kids to grow up in a concrete society. I want my kids to see what it's like to grow up with nature, right? To see the things that I saw, right? To still enjoy the things. Because at the end of the day, I always said to myself, where are all the birds and the squirrels, and where are they all going to go?
Well, God forbid we become what you said a few minutes ago about being a child in St. Bernard who doesn't even know, what is that, Mommy? That's a goat.
Right. That's right. And it's happening. And it's happening in a lot of places, right? So those kinds of things, right? And it's funny, my youngest son is a landscape architect. And I think I had a big role in that. And my only role was to come into an airport, picking up an outside magazine, and it says here, the top 5 careers that you need to choose. And one of them was landscape architect.
Wow.
And he was in high school when I gave it to him.
Okay.
And he's as passionate about the environment as I am.
Wow, that's great.
And actually all my kids are.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very conservation type minded people, right, who want to preserve and protect. So that, again, the future generations that live in St. Bernard, that grow in St. Bernard, just don't see concrete.
So they all live here?
Everyone but the landscape architect lives in Orleans.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So he lives in New Orleans, but the other ones live here, right? And I encourage all my kids to get involved in some way, shape, fashion, or form, to do things to make it.
How old are your
better.
kids? We didn't ask that question.
Yeah, so I have my daughter's 43. Rachel is 43. She's married. She's got 2 children. 14-year-old and a 1-year-old. So she's been on both sides of the spectrum. Chris, who's my middle son, is 38. He's got married and has 2 children, 2 boys. And then my youngest, Stephen, who's 33, is married and has 1 little girl.
Okay.
So we've been blessed with 5 grandkids, which are really a lot of fun. But they all take a keen interest in conservation, which I'm extremely proud of. And again, I think they see the vision longer term, that we can't just live quarter to quarter, day to day or quarter to quarter, that we need to live, like the Japanese view things in terms of hundreds of years.
Yeah. In the West, see, that's the difference between an Eastern perspective and a Western. I mean, that's not it's one of the differences.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so when we view things here, even from a corporate perspective, we view quarter to quarter.
Yep.
They have a longer term vision.
Yeah.
Right? And so they're willing to make some sacrifices to guarantee the long term success. And that's what we need to do. And we're not saying that you're going to have to get out there and truly sacrifice. We're not going to inflict pain on you. We're just going to ask you to accept some of the things we're trying to do, and to embrace them, and to do those kinds of things, and give us a chance.
Man, Howard, you are fighting upstream, because the more that we have Amazon, people get mad when my Amazon order doesn't come the next day. Like when they said, well, it's no longer next day, it'll be 2 days. Like people were losing their mind. And then now I can have my groceries delivered from Walmart. I don't even have to go to the store anymore.
You don't have to do anything.
So I appreciate, I love the fact that you are fighting this battle. I can't thank you enough, because it is a battle I believe that has to be fought. And I want to thank you for leading by example in this idea of a nuclear family. You've just demonstrated the value and importance of influence in your own family, and how your passion wasn't dictated or told to them, but it was caught by them, and they follow in your footsteps, and that's powerful. And I'm assuming next week they're all going to be at your house.
Well, actually, we're all going to Arkansas next week. So.
Of course you are. There you go. But together. Yeah, see, there you go. Like going to a beautiful outdoor place, probably, lots of land. Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. So that's the model. In my opinion, that's the model that we need to be highlighting on a regular basis.
So I had a good friend of mine ask me one day, as a community, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I didn't have an answer for it, because I don't know what people want us to be when we grow up here. As a community, not me, Howard Luna, but as a community, what do you want to be when you grow up? And that's the question that people need to start answering, right? Do you want to be the economic development driver? Do you want to be a bedroom community? What do you want to be? And that's the decision that collectively we need to come together and make. And that's the decision, those are the actions by the government needs to take to drive you to that conclusion.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe you can help me answer, what do we want to be when we grow up?
Well, I think it correlates with, if we answer this question. I heard this from Dennis Prager years ago. He would ask this question. He would say, what do you want your kids to be? Do you want them to be happy? Do you want them to be successful? Or do you want them to be good?
Do I have to rank them?
No, just choose one.
I want them to be happy.
You want them to be happy.
I want them to be happy.
But not good.
I assume one goes into the other one, but.
Does it though?
I guess you could be bad and be happy as well, but my definition of happy is probably not that.
And that's where you'd have to get a little bit deeper, because there's a lot of people that pursue happiness.
Yeah.
But they don't always do what's right for that happiness.
Point taken.
So that's the hard part, There's a lot of people that pursue lots of money because that'll make them happy.
Yes.
There's a lot of people that think success is, I have a title, I have a rank, I have this. But then we look at the people who are just the plumber who makes the right decision every day and has a loving family and raises his kids.
And he's happy. Is he?
I would say so.
I would think so.
Right, but that's where we gotta make that question, right?
Yeah, and you're right. And I'm not going to change my answer, but having my children happy is important to me.
Well, maybe I'll change your answer this way, because you said this when you walked in. You said there's a difference between success and the journey. Didn't you say that?
I said that there's a difference between the journey and the destination.
And the destination, that's right.
Yeah.
And so too often we think of the destination being the end-all goal, like that's what's most important. But what we find is that what's important in life is the journey. And what's really important in life isn't just the journey, but who we do the journey with.
That's correct. It's the company.
The company that we
It's the
keep.
company, yes.
And the scripture says that bad company corrupts good character.
Maybe that's why I'm not popular. You want to cut that off?
I don't know how to take that. I wouldn't agree with that because I feel like you probably surround yourself with good people all the time.
I do. I try to, right? And quite frankly, I have enough caustic friends. I don't need any more caustic friends.
Yeah.
And so I do.
And it sounds like the values that you have, I mean, nothing that we've discussed here today, I feel like, ooh, that's a little like, I don't know if I would do that or I want to be around. Like everything that you've said has been inspirational and like motivating. Good. Like I want to do something good.
So have you changed your opinion of me now?
I already had a good opinion of you.
No, and you're right. I mean, it's we surround ourselves with people that can help us grow, that can give us advice when we need it, and that we can look to for inspiration, right? So I'm not looking to associate myself with someone who's going to kind of drag me down, who I look at and view as saying, you know what, we don't have the same principles, because in many ways, I think I'm a man of conviction.
Many, I would think you just plainly are a man of conviction.
And the problem is that sometimes that's hard to sell to the public.
I disagree. I think people want to follow people with conviction. I think we're drawn to men and women of conviction, as opposed to people who are like, like, what do you think today? What do you think today? Like, those people are, I don't want to say toxic, but those are people that I tend to stay away from. I don't place trust in those people because whatever direction the wind is blowing that day is how they feel or where their character is. For me, I want to stand with a man who has beliefs and has conviction of what is right and wrong. Even though I may disagree with them, I know where you stand. And I can have a conversation with you. Even though I might disagree with you, I respect that you have a conviction about this. Where most people in today's society, they don't have convictions.
Yeah. So how do you choose them? So what do? They choose the most popular candidate sometimes.
In today's society, they're sheep.
They're sheep.
They just go along with what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
And we need more men with conviction. We need more men to inspire people to have their own convictions. That's what's missing in society. That's why I say, like, the nuclear family. Everybody's okay with, the breakdown of the nuclear family because nobody's standing up for it.
Yeah.
Nobody's promoting the fact, like, hey, me and my 14 people group are going to Arkansas to go spend Thanksgiving together as a family. We're going to play in the woods. Who's talking like that? I don't hear those stories anymore.
Yeah.
And why are we not promoting that? We should be.
I don't know. I don't have an answer for it. I wish I did.
Well, let's work on that then.
We can.
And I want to promote the fact, because I think what you're doing it goes hand in hand with that. You're creating bike paths and you're creating all of these opportunities where families can do this together.
Yeah.
When's the last time we talked about, hey, mom, dad, get your kids on a bike, let's go down this bike path?
And not everybody I'm going to say this, not everybody perfectly fits into organized sports. There's all kinds of things outside of it.
No.
And so what we need to do is focus on those people as well, right?
Absolutely.
And again, it's just getting that unit out and getting them connected, right? And so that they see something outside that real that they can touch, rather than watching it on a screen that they can only imagine. It's pretty powerful stuff when you get, and once you get them in an early age, they're the ones that
they catch it.
They're the ones that'll grow up that won't speed and won't run the stop sign, that won't throw litter out of the deal. So,
Yeah. Well, like, as I said, bad company corrupts good character. If you don't have time for your kids, they will be influenced by somebody else. And if you throw an iPad at them or some type of screen at them,
yeah,
whatever's on that screen is going to be influencing them.
and it's too much bad influence on that thing.
Way too
Way too much. Agreed.
So nothing changes until I change.
Nothing changes unless you change.
No, see, you keep saying it wrong. You keep pointing the finger away.
Well, okay, so it's nothing changes unless I change.
That's right.
Okay, maybe we ought to get some bumper stickers.
I think so. Because it has to be, because of the statement, nothing changes until you change. Still, I can say that, and I can point the fact that the government needs to change.
Yeah.
The police needs to change.
Yeah.
The education, we need to change Doris. Like, no. I have to change. I have to be the one that motivates my family, leads my family, is an example in this community. I have to be the one that shows grace and forgiveness towards people when I just want to rip their heads off.
Yeah.
We got to stop blaming
We do.
and start taking our own personal responsibility, take ownership of my choices, my decision, my life,
Yeah.
and own my family, own my job, and I'm going to do this.
So nothing changes unless I change.
Amen.
Amen.
Perfect. We'll end it right on that.
Good.
I'll give you the last word, though.
If I had to leave you with something,
Please.
leave everyone with something, right? It's go out and make someone smile today,
Oh, it's great.
right? Make someone else's day.
I can own that.
Be a giver.
Mhm.
Always be a giver.
Always be a giver. See, you just tagged onto my saying. Nothing changes until I change. So what do I have to do today? I have to be generous.
Yes.
I gotta make somebody smile. I have to take responsibility. I can do that, and I will do that for you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Good.
Howard, thank you.
It's my pleasure, Matt.
This
Thanks
was
so much.
fantastic.
Yeah, anytime.